We did want to have a live discussion here. A new law in New Jersey could send parents to jail for their children's misbehavior. According to the Township of Gloucester Minors and Parents Responsibility Ordinance, if a child is repeatedly found guilty of loitering, repeated school absences, violating curfew, felonies, or other offenses, their parents could face up to 90 days in prison and a $2,000 fine. Now, the ordinance was passed by the Township Council on July 28th. It was introduced after incidents of public disturbance involving kids at events like last year's Gloucester Township Day and Drone Show. During that event, a large brawl involving teens broke out and 11 people were arrested, including 9 teenagers. That's according to NewJersey.com. The ordinance includes 28 different offenses that range from felonies to minor infractions such as loitering and breaking curfew. Let's bring in a friend of the show, Jeremy Rosenthal, to break this all down for us here this morning on Live Now from Fox. Thank you as always for joining us here, Jeremy. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with how this is even possible, right? Is this really something that can be made into a law? We see it has been, but what does this entail? Can you break it down for us?
You can pass anything and make anything a law if you want to. The way that this works is that if a child is found delinquent multiple times, it could be of robbery, it could be of selling drugs, it could be, like you said, of loitering, or some more vague things like immorality or associating with other bad characters. Multiple times, the parent could face up to a $2,000 fine, and the parent could face up to 90 days of jail. So this is kind of a bit of a strict law. Now, the township, the police chief, the mayor all say, well, we don't really mean it this way. We just kind of mean this in a way to sort of get the parents' attention to act as a deterrent. But it's a bit of a hammer. 90 days in jail isn't a lot of fun. You can lose a job. You can lose a home. So it's a little cutting edge and controversial.
I wanted to share this post here. Disrespectful, out of control behavior. New Jersey police chief explains why parents could now face these fines. So when we talk about this out of control behavior, I mentioned some of it a little bit when I brought you in here, but what really defines this unruly behavior? What are some of those examples of offenses that could lead to these penalties for parents?
Some are pretty clear cut and some are intuitive, right? Armed robbery, vandalism, theft, selling drugs, those types of things. Where it gets really muddy and probably kind of problematic is where it starts talking about just immorality, where it starts talking about associations of the teenagers, of the kids, loitering, truancy, things like that. I think that in most instances, and this is as a lawyer and who's handled a lot of juvenile cases, there's sort of this idea, there's sort of this mindset that I can do a better job of raising your kids. If your kids are getting in trouble, it's because you're a bad parent, but I'm always the good parent. Doing juvenile law, you deal with a lot of parents who felt that way before it was their child that really got into trouble. I think in a lot of instances, if there's a lot of criticism of this law, there's in multiple fronts. One of them is certainly, look, parents need help in these situations. The parent of a truant child needs help. It's really hard to get a 6'2" teenager out of bed every single day who just doesn't want to do it. It's definitely a balance because parenting certainly comes into the equation, but at some point, children are responsible for their own choices, young adults and teenagers. So Gloucester Township has certainly had a lot of issues. The Gloucester Day Festival that you talked about, the drone show, had over 500 kids that were estimated to be unruly. There were police officers that were injured. There's been an uptick in that town of this type of violence. It's a city of about 65,000 people. It's a suburb of Philadelphia. So they're no stranger to this type of issue, and they're really frustrated and want to solve it.
So, Jeremy, what legal defenses, though, might parents have if they are charged under this ordinance? How can they really protect themselves?
Apologies to Gloucester Township. This law is wildly unconstitutional, and this is why we have a constitution. This is why we have a Supreme Court, because the framers recognize that throughout time, small towns, small municipalities, states would sort of overreact like this. There's a couple of legal problems. The first is we don't punish people criminally for things that another person does. You can be held on the hook civilly, potentially for vandalism that your child does, but to put you in jail, to put you in a cage for something that somebody else does, we just don't do that in the United States. That's one problem. Another problem is that some of these terms are so vague that they're going to be enforced in a way that's very selective and arbitrary. Immorality, right? Associations, things like that. And basically the town has kind of said, well, look, we're going to pass this law, but we don't really mean it. We're going to kind of deal with parents, and we just want to kind of scare them and do these things. And where that turns problematic is the police chief. That's fine and well now, but is he going to be the police chief in 30 years or 50 years or 100 years? I doubt it. And the person who's going to get sent to jail for 90 days, that's going to happen in the year 2042. And that's the time when this really becomes a problem. But any lawyer who really digs in and challenges this law is going to reverse it. It's just simply too vague, and it's too out there.
Speaking of challenging the law, have we seen anything similar like this before, or is this new territory here with this law in New Jersey?
Gloucester has copied some other municipalities and other cities' ordinances on this. They're the biggest city so far to have done this. Nobody has been charged yet under this law in Gloucester. It's a new provision, and that's probably why. So that's sort of the motion here. But small towns and cities and things like this, this is sort of what they'll do. They'll kind of throw it out there, and they'll throw out an ordinance that might feel good, but that may or may not be effective. And it probably will act to some degree as a deterrent for parents. But kind of talking about it earlier, in the instance of juvenile delinquents and in any parent who's ever dealt with an out of control teenager, it would certainly be very painful for the neighbors and the community to blame them when ultimately there's only so much that we're responsible for that our child does. And again, it's a very complicated and controversial topic, which really, of course, has a lot of different sides to it.
Has there been any discussion here on how it would be handled for children who may have a behavioral disorder, a minor who may have special needs?
Again, one of the problems with that, I don't know that they've had a lot of discussion and topics. It's sort of that knee-jerk reaction of, look, I can do a better job of raising your kids than you do. And if your kids are out of control, it's because you're a bad parent. Well, not necessarily, right? Again, children make their own choices. Some children struggle with depression. They struggle with, in some instances, hopefully not substance abuse and things like that. But again, having done juvenile law and having dealt as a prosecutor and as a defense lawyer with these types of things, it's really hard to blame a parent in some instances when, like I'm saying, you've got a teenager who won't go to school, and they're big, and they're almost like fully grown adults, and maybe mom and dad have special needs. Maybe it's grandma that's looking after the kid, and grandma simply is no match to tell a child, do this, don't do that. And there's that parent needs help, not necessarily a lecture. Although, again, a lecture feels good, and it feels good to pass a law that says, well, we're the toughest town in the world. But again, the issue is just a lot more complicated. Now, in defense of Gloucester, last year's situation was very ugly, and the numbers don't lie. There have been more and more juvenile arrests in their community for whatever reason. So you can't fault them for wanting to try to solve it.
Well, as you've been saying, I think there's just so many questions about how this would really be implemented. Also, that dynamic, Jeremy, between the relationship of a parent and child and how that is going to shape that as well. Is there anything else about this that you'd like to add before I let you go here?
Again, we've always seen towns, communities, even states that pass laws that they sort of say, well, we don't really mean it this way. We're going to kind of use this to scare people, and we're going to use this we're going to use this for good. But that's not how laws work, because we're not always in control of them. They are like Frankenstein's monster. You build them with the best of intentions, but you're not around to control it. And again, you got to remember that this law may be on the books for 100 years or 50 years, and it's not somebody in the year 2027 that gets that gets the shaft on it. It could be somebody in 15 or 20 years when we've sort of forgotten a lot of these debates. But this is how America goes. This is why we have courts. This is why we have lawyers who get paid a lot of money. So that's the takeaway for me.
All right, I'm sure we'll have you back on again as we continue to watch this develop and unfold. Jeremy Rosenthal, thank you so much for joining us as always.
Have a great morning.
You too.